This is a key to the worksheet on topic 9, and on this worksheet you want to use the distance formula to find the distance between these 2 points, and the same thing here, but in addition with this one, you also wanted to find the midpoint. So let's look at number 1. Number 1, we have these 2 points. Point 1 has coordinates -3, 2, and point 2 has coordinates 6, -3. And the directions in this case indicated use the distance formula to find the distance between these 2 points. Show your work. You would need to show the formulas being used, and then simplify the radical if possible. Give the exact answer and also the approximation to 3 decimal places. Okay, so let's talk about the distance formula. So the distance between 2 points x1, y1 and x2, y2 is given by this. So we have distance is going to be the square root of. Okay, so you subtract your x coordinates from each other, and it does not matter what order you subtract your x coordinates because you're squaring that quantity. And then you're going to add, and then you can do the same thing with the y coordinates. You're going to subtract the y coordinates from each other. Okay? All right, so, and then you're going to square that. Okay, so let's go ahead and label this. It helps if you label this. So let's call this point 1, and so that's going to be the x, the first, the x coordinate of the first point, so x sub 1, and then y sub 1 will be the y coordinate of the first point. And so this is the second point, then this is the x coordinate of the second point, and this is the y coordinate of the second point. And all you do is just substitute this information into the formula. Now, when it says you need to show that the formula is being used, what that's referring to is this. You need to say this. You need to say distance equals the square root of, parentheses, just plug back into the formula. So x2 minus x1, so 6 subtract a -3 squared plus, and then -3 minus 2 squared. So you subtract your y coordinates. All right, so that you needed to show. Now let's go ahead and simplify what we have in the radicand. So 6 subtract a -3 means 6 plus 3. So that's 6 plus 3 squared. And then plus, and over here, -3 subtract 2 means -3 plus a -2 squared. And then going a little bit further with that, 6 plus 3 is 9, so you get the square root of 9 squared, plus -3 plus a -2 is a -5 squared, and so I get the square root of 9 squared is 81. -5 times itself is a positive 25, and so I get the square root of, and then adding those two together, 81 plus 25 will give you 106. All right, so that's where we're at. So 106. Now, it did say simplify the radical if possible. So first of all, let's just see if there's a perfect square other than 1 that will go into 106. So what I'm going to do, even though 2 is not a perfect square, I'm just going to go ahead and do this. 106 divided by 2 gives me 53. Now, 53 is a prime number. So I know that since I use 2, 2 is not a perfect square, and 53 is there's no perfect square that goes into 53 other than 1. So I'm done. So I cannot simplify the square root of 106. Now, so the exact answer, when it says the exact answer will be this, square root of 106, and the approximation will be, and you approximate this to let's see, 3 decimal places. So you're going to say square root 106 equal, and then to 3 decimal places. 3 decimal places means 3 digits behind the decimal point. So you see the third digit behind the decimal point is at 5, but you got to look at the next digit to see if this 5 becomes 5, stays 5 or becomes 6. So since this 6 is greater than or equal to 5, then this is going to become 6. So I get 10.296. That's your approximation. All right, so that's number 1. Number 2, we have for the following points, determine the exact distance between these 2 points, and then the midpoint of the segment joining these 2 points, and then show the work for find the distance and midpoint. All right, and simplify the radical if possible. All right, so in this case, we're going to use both the distance formula and the midpoint formula. So the distance formula is and we had a earlier up here, so it'll be distance is d, which is the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus, and then y2 minus y1 squared. And the midpoint of a segment is going to be, and then that's where you add your x coordinates of the midpoints together. I'm sorry, the end points together, and then you add the y coordinates of the end points together, and you take the average of those. So you divide by 2, taking the average. You have 2 endpoints, take the average. 2 endpoints, take the average. Okay, so our points here, though, are -2, 4, and then the coordinates of the other point is 5, 3. So again, just like we did the previous problem, let's go ahead and label these. So let's call this x1, y1, x2, y2. All right, so let's do the distance first. So the distance will be the square root of, and again, you subtract your x coordinates from each other. So it does not matter whether you use 5 first or -2 first, it does not matter. This time, let's just use -2. Well, since I start with x2, let's just be consistent. So let's use 5. So 5 subtract -2 squared plus, and then we subtract the y coordinates from each other. 3 subtract 4 squared. Simplifying each of those parentheses, I get the square root of 5 subtracting -2 is 7 squared plus 3 subtract 4 is a -1 squared. 7 times itself is 49. -1 times itself is a +1. And so I get the square root of 50. All right. Now it did say, I want to remind you this, it did say simplify the radical. And notice that the square root of 50, 25 is a perfect square that goes into 50. So if you remember 25, well, the square root of 25, remember, I'm sorry, the square root of 50, excuse me. Square root of 50 is the square root of 25 times the square root of 2. And the square root of 25 is 5, so I guess 5 square root of 2. So the exact answer is 5 square root of 2. So you did have to simplify this. Now, I didn't say anything about round to 3 decimal places like I did number 1. So that's all you have to do for the distance. Now, the midpoint, that's where you add your x coordinates together, divide by 2, and add the y coordinates together, divide by 2. So you're going to say -2 plus 5. Take half of that, take the average, and then the y coordinates 4 plus 3, and take the average. And so simplifying that, -2 plus 5 is 3, so I get 3 halves. And then 4 plus 3 is 7, so I get 7 halves. And so there's your midpoint. So that's the midpoint of the segment joining these 2 points. Okay, so that is the key to worksheet topic 9, worksheet number 1.